A very good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of the Business Advocate on Ghana Television. And it's another day. It's raining outside, but we're here and we have to do business for the sake of Mother Ghana. Tonight, we're taking a look at the need for a long-term national development plan. But before we do that, let me announce to you that last week we promised to have a continuation of the discussion we started, streamlining small-scale mining sector into a national policy framework. That will be having the part 2 next week. But unfortunately, we're going to shape that to the 12th of November, where we're going to have our friends from the EPA to be part of this discussion. And so that will be that for the 12th of November. We're going to have a continuation of the discussion we started last week on the streamlining small-scale mining sector into a national mining policy framework. But tonight, the national development plans are a common feature of development planning in many modern states. In fact, long-term strategic planning by states offer them long-term perspective of development and defines a desired destination. By such a plan, a nation is able to identify the role different sectors of society need to play in helping that nation to reach its goals. The practice has at one time or the other been a feature of Ghana's development planning also. In fact, the practice dates back to colonial times when it was then the Gold Coast. There have been numerous such plans in Ghana's history. Talk about the first 7-year development plan by Governor Gordon Gagisberg. We will talk about the 2-year Railroad Development Plan, 1971. Now, Ghana's fourth Republican democratic transition has witnessed various governments preparing national development agenda. They include Ghana's Vision 2020, the first step 1996 to 2000, Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy GPRS 1. We're talking about GPRS 2, and followed by the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda GSGDA, which ends in 2017. Now, the National Development Planning Commission (NDPC) in August this year launched the process of the GSGDA successor, actually, which is the 40-year National Development Plan spanning 2018 to 2057. But tonight, Business Advocate, courtesy of the Busak Fund, GBC and GJA, will examine the essence of the 40-year development plan and find out whether its goals meet the expectations of the Ghana Institute of Planners, Professional Association of Planners, which has for quite some time now been advocating for a long-term national development plan for Ghana. And so tonight, you'll be part of the discussion. Our text line, which is also going to serve as the WhatsApp line, is 0261783382. Number again is 0261783382. And before we start off, let me quickly introduce my special guests for tonight. Straight ahead of me, I have Mr. Alfred Kwesi Opoku, fellow of the Ghana Institute of Planners. He's the president, actually. You're welcome, sir. Vice President. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Then also on his right, coming from that side of the set, I have Nana Osaibunsu, Chief Executive, Private Enterprise Federation. Nana, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir.
Right after Nana, the man whose love everything will fall tonight, Dr. Nimoy Thompson, Director General, National Development Planning Commission. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Then, right close to me, on my left-hand side, I have Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director, Institute of Democratic Governance. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening.
You're also welcome.
Thank you.
I saw you earlier on during the day. Good to have you here also. First of all, let me start with Mr. Opoku.
Right.
Yeah, Opoku, what are the aims and objectives of the Ghana Institute of Planners?
Well, Ghana Institute of Planners, first and foremost, is a professional body of planners, certified as planners and practicing. Our aim is to ensure the sanctity of the built environment through a functional land use plans, complemented by appropriate development policies. And we also seek to protect our members, ensure that they perform the way that they should according to the rules of the game, and then seek the welfare of our members. So these are our aims and objectives.
May we have an idea about your numerical strength in terms of membership?
Yeah, we would be 380. At the moment, we are 350, but we are adding 30 new members by November 27 when we meet for our annual general conference. So I would say that we are 380 by now, active members. There have been more. There are more on the list, but if you're asking me the number, active members, I'll put us about 380, yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, how influential is the GIP in promoting development in Ghana?
Well, there are about 216 district assemblies, the generic term, in Ghana. And in each assembly, at least there are two planners, one for settlement and one for policy. And then if you go to NDPC, where all plans are emerging, at least we have 8 of the staff, the civil, the staff being planners. In almost every, if you go to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, you'll find quite a number of them there. So any sector that develops plans, you find a number of planning professionals there. So we are into ensuring that plans are made, and therefore at the bottom of planning and development in Ghana, you find a member there. He may have been registered as a member or not, but at least a professional planner is there. So that is where we function mostly.
I want to believe that you have a number of challenges, just as any institute or institution. But I want to find out which of them really prompted you to seek the assistance of the Busek Fund in this advocacy action.
About 4 main factors moved us. One of them is that even if you look at our constitution, the directive principle of state, it says that when a government comes into power, at the end of the second year, it should present its plans for approval at Parliament. As of now, by what criteria is that plan approved? You know, there's no long-term plan by which the parliamentarians would use it as a yardstick to say that this plan will fit into a future thinking of Ghana. And therefore, we find it as an anomaly. Again, Ghana Institute of Planners is a member of the Commonwealth Association of Planners. In fact, at the moment, Ghana is holding the vice chair of that body. And we are in touch with our other colleagues all over the Commonwealth membership in Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Singapore, all of them. So we are exchange notes, and also from the Secretariat. We know what they are doing, and know the kind of plans they are doing, and how their nations are growing. And so we are saying to ourselves, why not? That we also cannot have. But not just because other countries are doing. Ghana itself has a history. We always want to quote about Gettysburg, if you just read, as to the 10-year, even though it was not completed, but it was largely and hugely successful. That the few years that it did was very successful. We like to quote that. Again, Osagyefo's work and happiness plan, you know, we also want to quote it with Reddick. And so this generation, what are we doing to ourselves? That we can have a plan, so that one day we also be quoted as having prepared a plan for the country, you know. Again, we want to talk about the fact that we always prepare, at the end of each 4 years, we prepare medium-term plan, which does not dovetail into any future thing. And so 4 years, planners in our practice will be called upon to craft a goal, craft objectives. It will end in 4 years, and then we begin again. So how do we even check ourselves that we are heading towards a point? So we would, for these things, we said that no, let us think about a long-term thing, so that whoever is preparing the medium-term knows that I'm beginning from this point and I'm marching towards a particular point. Because of this, we said that if we need help, we want some help so that we'll be able to prepare a long-term visionary plan. So all these short-term things will be dovetailing into a future thing. And these are the things that prompted us to look for support, to advocate for this long-term plan.
I see. So does it mean that all these years, we didn't have anything on paper that we were following in terms of long-term planning for this country?
Yes. Apart from the historical points that we have, all of them have been medium-term. The NDC one attempted a 20-year plan, but it didn't go through. When the government changed, the plans also changed. Then the second one, NPP also came and attempted something, then reduced it to a series of medium-term plans. And so if you're talking about long-term, that is 10 years and above, 20 and beyond. then we do not have one as at now, as we're operating. We are always running and stopping at every 4 years and beginning all over again without knowing how far we're going.
I see. Nana Sabunsu, we've listened to Mr. Opoku. From where you sit, how crucial is a long-term development plan? If we look at the way the Asian targets have gone, we normally refer them when we want to talk. Now it becomes almost like a cliche every time, Asian targets. But what really are we doing? Because there are peers actually, Nana.
Well, I don't know if they are peers, but I don't know why we're always comparing ourselves to others, and when we have our peculiar ways and norms as to how we do business. But the essence is, yes, there's a need for a long-term plan. Plan is one thing, implementation is another. The skill sets to implement and the drivers of the implementation, they are critical. And who is responsible for the plan? Who is bound by the plan? If you lay the plan and it's just an advisory plan, how is it going to achieve your objectives? As of now, the Constitution does not bind the president or any leadership to accept the NDPC plan. It's just advisory. They can look at it, they can accept it, they can discard it as it is. So if we're talking about having a long-term plan as a destination or objective by itself, then I don't think it's right. What we have to do is get maybe a constitutional change, a legal binding document on the leadership of the country, that when you come in, you cannot change within that space what is required under the long-term planning. You can amend to suit the conditions on the ground, you can amend to suit the terrain, and also bring things together. But you cannot drastically change. There must be some measurable indicators. There must be punitive, I would put it punitive things, that if you do, Parliament should not approve the resources to finance the new program that you want to do outside of the plan. These are some of the tenets that we got to put in place. So as much as we would appreciate that we want a long-term plan, we also will have to see that, yes, the long-term plan is laudable and feasible, and that is implementable in a way that is driven to achieve the objectives. And now the consensus to get to the plan is critical. The grassroots consensus, having the diversity of the regions and everybody coming to play in this plan is very important.
We'll come to that pretty soon. I can see Doc is gearing up for that. But Mr. Opoku, back to you. Did you make, did I say your institute?
Yes.
Did you have the chance of making input into the 40-year National Development Plan?
Well, we first made sufficient noise, purposeful one as well. We held 2 AGMs, and the first one was, the guest speaker was Honorable P.V. Obin, who has been called to glory, and even asked us to submit 14 names and a concept paper. Unfortunately, the very week that we were supposed to meet him, then this kind of unfortunate thing happened. But at that forum, he agreed that a long-term plan, that time 40 had not come, a long-term plan was important. The following year, we also had another AGM, still hitting on the point, and luckily, the guest speaker was Dr. Nemo himself. And he agreed that that thing is important.
So there was no 40 then?
There was no 40 then, but a long-term thing was there. And even hinted us at that stage that government has mandated the NDPC to start doing something. So we had made these points known. We were not consulted to come and say what we said is what we have picked, but at least the noise we made, government has taken it up. We started making that point when there was a white paper saying that from the Constitutional Review Committee that the long-term plan was not going to be done. And we said, no. I mean, as planners, and given the issues we had raised earlier, we need to start and talk about something. So eventually, when the government decided to do it, we didn't want to look for any glory for ourselves, but rather say that, yes, at least someone has heard us and government has started a thing, then we are ready to come in and support that. So this is how we got ourselves involved. At the moment, and thankfully for the committee from NDPC, our president is serving on the technical committee of the 40-year plan. And that shows us to us that we have been accepted into the system, and we are still ready to continue to support in any way that we are called upon to do.
Well, Akute, I will give the final bit to Dr. Nemo Eton's person, but Dr. Akute, what do you think has been the bane when it comes to Ghana not executing our development plans? Look, we had them, yes, but execution, implementation, just as the answer. What do you think had been the problem?
Thank you very much. It's a combination of factors, and part is political culture, which I'm afraid hasn't changed much. We haven't mastered the art of building broad-based political support for policies that clearly would outlive the tenure of one government or the other. And you don't even have to see it in governments, but it also goes across. It also goes within even ruling governments, where sometimes the change of a leader, it could be president. We've had presidents mostly. A new president comes and he's not likely to follow. And so you ask yourself that why is this so? In a democracy like this one, you would expect that the political parties, would own the development idea and the policies and the priorities and so on. So the president would be implementing the plan, but clearly the ownership, the debates, and the priorities and so on, the parties play a very important and a very formal role. Now, but that works well when you have a one-party regime or a very highly dominant party situation like you may have in China now, or in Malaysia, which has other parties, but one party has been around for a long time. And then you can also have it, in Europe after the Second World War. You find out that social democratic governments were in power for a long time. They found a way of governing with coalitions, but it provided the stability that they required. And the social democratic parties were the dominant parties. So they provided a certain anchorage, a certain, continuity. And continuity is important if you want to execute development plan. So when we speak about peace and stability, it's the condition that you create to ensure that policies are not tied to individuals who leave office one day. The day they leave, the policies go, but the policies belongs to the group. And it has agents and champions and institutions that would ensure that there will be that continuity. Now, we haven't been able to build those conditions, regrettably. The first one is, I think, as Ghanaians, we like consultations, but we don't like dialogue in a formal sense that leads to a certain agreement which binds people, And so consultation, I'll tell you what I'm doing. You say yes or no. It's not binding on me, and but I still consulted you, and I take what you said as you support it, even if you oppose it.
It becomes a formality.
It's a practice that we've built over time, but within the democratic setting, these days you are not going to get a strong man, and if you look at the dynamics of our situation, the margins, are small, especially for presidential elections and so on. But increasingly, we're also beginning to see that our parties are not development focused. You see, they don't claim, let alone want to own the policies. So they do a lot of elections, but when it comes to planning, and I think when people are in government, they realize how lonely it is. Once I asked some parliamentarians, how does the party back you up, support you? You have, is the party interested in trade policy, in health, education, roads, and so on? And therefore has a way of saying, we want to achieve this when it comes to trade. We want to increase, we want to see more Ghanaians, or we want to take hold of our domestic market. We should be the dominant, our products must there. We must consume what we produce and so on. The parties are not interested in that. You see, so they sometimes the president struggle, but at the same time, the parties are also claiming that, hey, you know, we put you there, and we have a manifesto. Which manifesto?
I see.
You know, so it's quite
fun, huh?
Yeah.
it's a very, you know, if you compare the Asian model, the Chinese model, India plans a lot too, and you compare that to what we experience in here, you just planning development. I think I must say that
yes.
we've not put development, and especially human development, at the center of what we're doing, because planning is driven by that.
Wonderful.
Yes,
Wonderful.
development, long-term development planning. You are projecting, and you're saying that, look, sometimes it's indicative planning. We want to transform, this region should become like this, okay? The economy should grow, education, health, we want to beautify it. It must be the best in the sub-region. How many people do we need? What kind of work are they?
So we would go into those details very soon.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Dr. Anyway Thompson.
Yes, sir. I'm at your service.
Now, you are the head of the National Development Planning Commission.
Yes.
Now, you've heard from your colleagues here. The document you're pushing forward now, do you see it's being binding on the powers that be, as it were?
Well, thank you. Let me just put it, the whole process within a historical context, and then we can derive from that. There's a law. The Constitution generally prescribes that we should have that, the Director Principles of State Policy, that we should have multi-year rolling plans, and that NDPs should produce broad plans and so forth. But more specifically, in 2011, Parliament passed a law, Act 815, that says that we must have a long-term national development plan approved by Parliament. This was in 2011. So as we sit here, Parliament is actually expecting a long-term national development plan that it will approve. And once Parliament approves, one would think that will be binding on whoever comes into office. And then in the same year, the Constitution Review Commission also issued its report, titled From Political to Developmental Constitution. And I emphasize that because of what Emmanuel referred to earlier, that most of these programs are not really developmentally oriented. And these reforms are actually meant to address those issues, to shift the focus of the Constitution from political expediency to developmental issues. And Chapter 3 of that actually requests and makes a number of recommendations, subsidiary recommendations, that we must have a long-term national development plan with explicit provisions made in the Constitution, which be amendments and so forth and so on. So we have that aspect also. And then there's what we call the demographic imperative for long-term development planning, because the population is growing. As recently as 2010, it was only just over 24 million. As I speak with you, is 27 million. By 2050, we should reach 46 million. And by 2057, we should reach about 50 million. The proportion of people living in urban areas should also rise from around 55 now to about 90% over that same period. You don't want to wait until then before you begin to plan, because it has implications for service provision, education, and so forth and so on. So all these things come together to make a case for the preparation of a long-term national development plan.
In this case, a 40-year national development plan.
The 40-year, I will explain how we arrived at that. But it's long-term national development plan, all the same, long-term, to kind of move us away from the medium-term planning. We haven't really, as a nation in our existence, we've only made one attempt on long-term national development plan, which was Vision 2020. Unfortunately, it faltered for a whole host of reasons. The process was cumbersome and so forth and so on. And you don't want in development planning to be following development. The plan should always lead the development. Unfortunately, because of all these process impediments, it ended up following the and it's been like that for a while. So the exercise we've launched and the strategy we're using is for us to kind of move behind the development process and actually lead that. But I told your cameraman that I would like to illustrate this, if it's okay with you.
Okay. No.
For you and your
No problem.
people.
My director is away upstairs.
Oh, yeah, he's aware of that here. So basically, this is what we've had. I can put it here. I don't know if your camera can catch that. Can you? You can't.
Yeah, they're doing it. Just hold it as it is. Let it be on your.
Oh, okay. So this is what we have so far. This, what you see here, is Vision 2020.
That's right.
It was a 25-year long-term perspective plan, and it was supposed to be implemented in five-year plans. So 5 times 5, you get 25. And the first one was issued, 5-year plan. Unfortunately, again, because of implementation problems, it actually became something like 3 years. And then we had the first GPRS, Ghana Poverty Reduction Strategy. That also had some challenges. Thereafter, that was also 3 years. Thereafter, we moved into a 4-year planning cycle. So 2006 to 2009 became the next GPRS, Growth and Poverty Reduction. And then the next, and it was chosen, we chose 2009 for a particular reason, so that it would overlap with the election cycle to force an incoming government to recognize that the year was 2008. But the plan ended in 2009, which means the next government had to respect the last year. And then the next plan was 2010 to 2013, which was the GSGDA 1 that you talked about. Currently, as I speak with you, we're in the midst of implementing GSGDA 2, which started in 2014 and will end in 2017. The next medium-term plan then comes in 2018 and ends in 2021. Thereafter, it will just go on infinitum. It just so happens that between 2018 and 2057, when Ghana becomes 100, or Ghana turns 100 years old, we'll have 10 medium-term plans, just by coincidence. So when we say a long-term national development plan, we're basically talking about 10 4-year medium-term plans, which gives you 40 years. It also so happens that over the same time period, we'll have 10 elections between 2020 and 2056. So perfect. Everything just falls in place. It falls in place. With or without a long-term national development plan, we'll have these medium-term plans. The advantage of situating them within a long-term development framework or strategy is that you have these, you have a sense of where you're heading. Someone used a very interesting description on Ghana when we launched. He said that the problem with Ghana is that we don't have an image of ourselves. It's like building without a plan. And that's what the long-term plan is going to do. So and let me emphasize that contrary to what people are saying, that the long-term national development plan would tie the hands of political parties, no. Each party along this spectrum is actually, all these things represent political parties' medium-term plans based on their manifestos, based on their ideologies, based on their work. The only thing is that they will all be working towards higher objectives and goals specified within the long-term national development plan. And we are trying to make it as participatory as possible. What Emmanuel referred to as presented, and you say, okay, the fact that I showed it to you means that you've given. We are trying to move away from that. So as I speak with you, we are conducting 10 regional consultations. We've covered 6 so far. Okay. And we have 12 political party representatives whom we plan with, we go around with. So from the very beginning, and this has never been done before, where the political parties are part of the process itself. It's not as if we hide somewhere, write the report, and then give it to them. No, from the very beginning, they're part of it. They'll raise issues. In fact, I was just reading, we have a WhatsApp platform where we go back and forth. Good. And then we'll move to more technical consultations beginning early next year.
Mr. Poku, do you see this as adequately representative of the people's views? It's talking about political parties and others, being consulted.
Yeah, in principle, yes. Participatory planning. It's appropriate that the political parties are there. They are going from region to region. As of now, they are collecting data, is that right? And seeing what is within each region and their support. But the fact is that which Ghana Institute of Planners are putting across is this, that once they finish these rounds, what next?
Technical consultations.
Technical consultations.
That will involve groups like yours,
will involve us.
AGI, right. GBA.
So it means that if they are going to present a report and present that report to these technical consultations, it's one step. But we're advocating for a particular style. If you remember what we did with the preparation of the Constitution, the National Constitution,
That's right.
when a technical report was prepared by, like they're doing, at that time it was experts that they were called to prepare aspects of the Constitution, human rights, that.
That's right.
Then they invited, all shades of opinion, technical, business, consultative assembly talent, so that when we all meet, we are not going to go around again, but all of us will be giving copies to study your presentation, and then you come together.
Yes.
You sit together for about a month or as the budget and time will permit us. So all of us, before we get up, all of us have discussed it over and over and over and agreed. In that case, it is not just 2 members from our party following you and doing that thing. But after that, we have presented another document where we have invited more than 2 persons from the party to come and sit them together. So from that point in time, we have all together looked at it once, and then we agree upon that. Once that is done, then no one can stand up and say that I wasn't part of it. After that, again, like the Constitution, with the Constitution, when that thing was done, a referendum was passed, conducted for that. I cannot call for a referendum. It's expensive and too long. What we could do is that agreed document could go to Parliament, as it were, and then, they know how to craft a law and put on it. That this thing is a national document accepted by all. And therefore, we are going to ensure that whoever comes in is going to follow it. The language should have such regulatory, in the regulatory form, such that you cannot easily bypass it. For example, someone can take the government to court if the Constitution is flouted. It's because the way it is couched. It's couched. So that if this national plan is made that way, so that somebody can say that, no, this is our vision, which I spent time and effort to, build.
That's right.
You cannot go beyond that. Once you do that, there is not only participatory and national accepted, but it becomes binding to any government, so that you cannot take it away.
Understand that you can be taken to court.
Yes. Again, the point has been made that once that document is made, a party must develop its manifesto out of that.
Okay, out of the
mother plan, right? So that once your manifesto has come out of it, then you even will not dare to go beyond that. And when you go beyond that, since there are clauses, checks and balances within it, we can take you to court that this is what we have agreed to do. You can't do that otherwise. So this is what GIP is putting across, that it will be participatory, and then it will also be binding, and then you cannot easily flout it away from what the people want to do.
No, Sebonsu. You are the chief executive of Private Enterprise Federation, and you are. What do you think it's the view of your members?
The view is that, despite all the rhetoric, if you don't have a legal bind on the leadership, all the documentation and the participation and the grassroots canvassing and consultations are not going to add too much. We're talking about 2 things here.
Yes.
The Constitution and Parliament. Can Parliament enact laws that usurp Constitution? I don't think so. I don't think so. So the Act 815 that even allows, the 2011 allows for certain things to be done. The president says, I'm not bound by it. And I'm not going to follow it. Because the Constitution allows me to do A, B, C, D. So what we're saying is, can we do a constitutional amendment to allow a binding requirement on the presidency or the executive that you cannot deviate from a consensus comprehensive plan or framework? As Mr. Poku indicated, the party manifesto should be emanating from the long-term plan, not the other way around. How many people have gone to party congress and critically reviewed the party manifesto? It's sometimes, or most times, hijacked by 4 voicey people in the parliament, in the party, and becomes a party manifesto. It's not vetted at party congress, and then it becomes the panacea for all our, development plans. So let's look at those kind of gaps and challenges, address them. What Dr. Thompson and his people are doing, very laudable, having grassroots consultations and all. But I don't want it to be part of the 2020 vision. I don't want it to be part of the medium term and all the other medium term disjointed, non-coordinated plans. What we're saying is, let's look at a comprehensive plan that has a buy-in as we're doing, but has a bind on the leadership, the person who's going to make the decisions, so that he cannot deviate from it. And with that, what I said beginning, who is going to implement what? And what are the skill sets to implementation? And where's the driver? Who is going to drive it? We have had from colonial days to today, public sector driven economic development, which has failed totally. We have a private sector that is teetering on collapsing in mediocrity because we have not allowed them to grow. If we look at other terrains and other jurisdictions where private sector had performed, it's basically because they've been given the investment climate and allowed to do things that normally or previously the colonial masters used to do. So look at it from the perspective of the private sector. Of all this laudable framework, there got to be some investments. Who is going to invest what? Government doesn't have resources. Government has never had enough resources. So you got to look at investors. And that's where governments turn around to the foreign direct investors and say, oh, we don't have deep pockets. We don't have the expertise. We don't have the technical skills. So let's bring these guys in. And we're always doing that at the detriment of the local private sector. So what we're looking at is, once we're doing all the consultations and driving this laudable plan, it got to have a driver. It got to have a destination. It got to have, expected outcomes with indicators, measurable indicators out of the 4-year period that we can check or out of the 6-year that we can check. And then we see, how do we breach the inequality? How do we bring youth for continuity? How do we allow women to also have space? So the private sector is looking at things that we can do that had not been allowed to be done because the government had not respected the part that the private sector is an equal partner in the development of the country.
Good. Now, if you're watching us, we're discussing the need for a long-term national development plan for Ghana. You may join us via WhatsApp and the SMS 0261783332. 0261783382 is the number actually. So you could start composing your messages via WhatsApp and normal SMS through that number 0261783382. We're discussing need for a long-term national development plan. Dr. Akwete,
yes,
I saw you were eager to come in. What's
from we have a peculiar challenge now. We cannot look at the long-term development planning culture of Asia, South Asia, especially South Korea, where if you go to South Korea, probably you go beyond that. And even India's Development Planning Commission is these are supranational. The development planning, first of all, has a strong political leader behind it, or leadership, if it's a party like in Malaysia. Then you have this technocracy or bureaucracy. Nimue, which one do you like?
Technocracy. Bureaucracy has a bit of technocracy.
It's like in all these countries, it's like a supra ministry. Okay. If it has enough power, such power as an institution, and when you go to their offices and their location,
what does it derive its powers from?
The law, but also the founders, the establishing of the institution, they were able to conceptualize its role. This is the planning authority of the land that must have access to sector ministries, departments and agencies, and when it sets targets that must be followed, is monitoring and so on. So it's the central government's planning and coordinating authority with a lot of powers, So when you're told about the history of the Planning Commission in South Korea, the fight between them and the ministry and so on, and finally the president at the time, Park, had to settle it authoritatively and said this is where the power to plan, and the laws and resources, the people, is a think tank of the government, of the nation, you know, in terms of the public sector, the government machinery. And when you look at the steps they went through to now not only use that power to advance what is seen as the bigger national vision, the development plan, long term, whether they do 5-year terms, but it's the culture and it's an expectation that 5 years is going to lead us probably through 100 years. It's a way of life.
Yes, yes.
You must. And the implementation is rigorous. It's done. Nobody disputes that we will not achieve the target set for the sectors. Okay?
That's right.
Education, what we need. They just go focus on what has been decided and they would implement it. Okay. Now, in those settings, you have a strong president. Park was a soldier, but he was very driven development agent or champion of development. And he towered over his party and so on. But after him, he was assassinated or murdered or no, assassinated. The tradition continued because they started seeing results. Okay, and they transformed. It transformed. You cannot understand South Korean transformation without looking at the role of the Development Planning Commission and how it worked with the private sector. The strategy to build a strong, competitive private sector and with a lot of history and nationalism around it and so on and so forth. So there is a vision, there is a champion, okay, political, institutional resources are devoted, and there's a certain competence of managing, delivering results and mechanisms to ensure that this happens. All of that we do not have because probably Nkrumah wanted to build it and started building it, and he had some of the wonderful, most competent Ghanaian planners around, Mr. J.H. Mensah and others. But after the coup, somehow we thought planning is not something that we should do. And we never took it seriously. And that culture of not taking the vision seriously and its delivery, you know, as the most strategic thing you want to achieve. And you want the best of brains. You know, you want the best of people, analysts, the PhDs, experts in this. It's like the sector, the entire national nation, you know, reduced or you know, how do you put it, modeled. And in one institution, you find everything there, but it's also relating to people outside and so on and so forth. We failed to build the institution. We discarded planning. We did not have strong champions. And in the 90s, when NDC was set up, NDPC was set up, we had returned from the era of structural adjustment and all that, and then development planning was put back on the table and so on, with a certain clarity of vision and 5-year plans and so on. But then when you look at it carefully, NDPC did not get, you know, the kind of political backing and culture. You know, it wasn't positioned to drive this process. Rather, you find very contradictory relationship to the institution from the office of the president or the president himself, or, you know, in the past, you know. So we've come a long way, but I still think the fundamental weakness is that in a competitive democracy like this, okay, you want to see a situation where there is a certain mechanism around which political parties, okay, or that compels political parties to place development, national development at the center of things, to work with an institution like NDPC.
Good.
Okay, I know you want to come in.
Yeah,
this is why I said you should let Nimwe say a lot more.
I'll allow him to come in, but let's do a few messages here. This is from Kwabena from East Legon. It says, I agree with the Chief Executive of PEV. The document should be a clear constitutional backing, should have a clear constitutional backing that binds on the leader of the nation, developmental interest first before manifestos. That's what somebody's saying. And this one's from another person. Say, hello, good evening. I'm watching your program on GTV. Please, can you speak on behalf of Okay, can you, on customers' behalf, on the investment companies born out of origin, can you talk? I think, but asking whether we can do anything on behalf of customers and investments born out of origin, since you want the best for us, who made the whole country. We are dying. Well, this message seems to be a bit misplaced. I'm sorry. Okay, it's a repeated message. Let's go to another one here. I'll be with you, so gentlemen. Okay, because I want them to know that we acknowledge their contribution. This one says, transport from Jeff Traco, how would the first implementation be like? And what are the requirements from 2018 to 2021? What must be achieved? I think Dr. Nibetons, you have to answer this for the press. So it says, what are the requirements for 2018 to 2021 be like, and what must be achieved? Okay, you may please note that down. And that one here says, good evening. I'm enjoying the show. I want to ask if the long-term national development plan is funded by the national budget. This from Doris. So, Doc, another one in your cap. This one also says, irrespective of the number of years and manner of craft, no development plan will work in the in the state like Ghana. I see. Let's have some. Okay.
That's a lot so.
This one also says, recently there was a team which went around to register Ghanaian for national identification card. What has the project ended? Where has the project ended, as you say? This should have been a good plan to solve this current register. If all Ghanaians are having this card today, we should have used it to solve this problem concerning, new voters register. Misplaced that message here, my brother. This one also says, Ghana, we have a long way to go. Okay.
You will.
Okay. And this one also from... Okay, Doc, you noted a few concerns. You may quickly respond.
Well, let me repeat something I said earlier that probably I didn't state forcefully enough.
Okay.
The recommendations of the CRC report include suggestions or recommendations, or let me say the CRC report includes recommendations for the plan to be entrenched, to be enacted as part of the amendments in the Constitution. It must be binding on successive government. So it's clear that in addition to whatever is it that Parliament has asked for in terms of law, these are recommendations. In any case, there are other frameworks, and this is going to form part of the long-term national development plan. We have international frameworks that are binding on government without anybody raising any fuss over that.
Okay.
The MDGs, for example, which were 25 years and not 15 because the base year was 1990, were binding on government. When we started in 2020, it was an MPP that was in power. It dutifully carried out. It finished under NDC. We'll soon be having the AU's Agenda 2063. So the issue of binding, if we have a credible product, the binding issues, not that it's not necessary, it certainly is. But I don't want us to obsess over that and think that without that, nothing will work. Certainly, we can proceed with that, in addition to whatever the law says. The issue of the private sector, no question about that. First of all, a long-term national development plan is more or less a vision document, long-term perspective. And so that is actually given to us in the Directive Principles of State Policy. As the plan itself is crafted, we get to a place where we call roles and responsibilities. The role of the state, the role of the public sector. In fact, even at this level of the consultations, that debate has already started emerging among the political parties.
That's right.
What should be the role of the state? What should be the role of the private sector? Of course, there's no number per se, but it will vary from party to party,
Right.
from government to government, depending on prevailing circumstances. But certainly, that is a major role. During our consultations, I think when we met with President Kufuor, he reminded us that, listen, part of the reason why we're having problems with the city is that we're not exporting enough. Government doesn't export anything. It's the private sector that exports. Therefore, if you want to get out of your city problems, do more for the private sector. We brought all those things on board. So nobody questions that. In fact, the private sector, as Emmanuel said, we've been doing indicative planning, which means you have a sense of where we should go, and different players settle on that. The issue of capacity to deliver. Yes, Emmanuel again hit the nail right on the head. We have a capacity problem in this country. And again, we have because we haven't taken a long-term view of development over the years, in fact, over decades. Only last week we heard that Legon, the largest public university in Ghana, had rejected 17,000 people who qualified to be admitted, but they simply didn't have the space. Even if we assume that 7,000 of them will find admission somewhere else. That will be left with 10,000 people who ideally will qualify to attain the kind of level of education we need. So that is also being captured in the plan. We have, in fact, we have a whole human resource development plan that we are developing to match the thing, because there are a lot of things we want to do that we cannot do with the existing capacity. And we need to recognize that and work on that. Within the proposed plan, we're also going to have a national infrastructure plan that will plaster the country with railways and highways and so forth and so on. We need to be able to develop an indigenous capacity to build those railways. We can't just design things and fold our arms and hope that the Chinese will come and do everything for us. So yes, it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be easy. I like the historical summary that Emmanuel gave in terms of moving away from the structural adjustment period to planning. It was a deliberate policy. But lastly, let me also touch on, since we're learning from experiences, the issue of Korea. Korea and the role of PAC and so forth and so on. One thing Korea had, and we are trying to develop now, given our own political circumstances, it's a common vision of where they wanted to be, irrespective of who was in power. There were a number of assassinations, well, military coups, and then eventually PAC. But one thing they had was that Korea must rise through industrialization, such that even when private businessmen were accused, they enacted a law in Korea called the Illicit Accumulation of Wealth Law. And they tried businessmen. And after they were tried, Park Chung-hee gave them an option that you can go to jail but keep your money, or you stay out of jail and invest in strategic sectors of the economy.
I don't know whether we'll be able to exhaust this discussion this evening.
Possibly not. I don't think so.
Doc, you agree with us? Because I should bring you back. Wonderful. I've got about 3 minutes to go. And
no kidding. Are you serious?
One hour.
Don't raise a big issue, except to say something that I think is important. I still want us to probably look critically at the question of the binding constitutional provisions or a law that says, look, everybody must do this and so on. Singapore tells us how they did this. It's quickly.
But we might have to reserve that for next week.
It took a long debate and serious disagreement. The disagreement between Singapore and Malaysia was over the debate on the vision. The new state, how to build it, what should be the priorities. Even the civil service, should it be merit-based or political? Nepotism, how do you handle it, and so on and so forth.
So these are
those kinds of things,
we should be looking at.
They should come before the law. You see, and I like the fact that Nimboy says they've attracted the parties and so on, but a lot more needs to be done to build that solid political. It's a real debate how you frame it and so on. And out of that, once they agree, your law would work. In fact, you put the law on, it would work, because there's a political...
Exactly, the underlying will.
So we have to move to another segment, actually, another round, probably. You agree, gentlemen?
Sure.
Yes.
Mr. Opoku, GIP. So far, you heard from Doug, very brilliant, wonderful ideas, and you can see them coming through.
Went by so fast. I can't believe this.
You can see them coming through.
Yes.
We'll definitely go for another week.
Even looking at the capacity, for me, I won't even look at government change or strongman or whatever. Even in ministry, you appoint a minister for Agric. He's doing very well. Because he's doing well and another ministry is not doing well, you move him from Minister of Agric and go to Minister of Education.
That's a big problem.
And so all the ideas and the plans that the man is driving at Agric, he has moved into another ministry.
There are different ministries
altogether. So stability, stability of a person in a particular sector driving the matter up. When we're talking about the other countries where even if there's a government change, the new government, we have all agreed that this thing should be done. For example, when NDPC was first set up in those days, it appeared that when you retire, then there's a go there. So it looks like, even if they
it's not only when you retire, when you were removed.
When you're
not anymore.
No more. So it didn't have that personality to grab it. Neither did it have the political power to put it behind it. So those days from the beginning.
I've got about 2 minutes to go, gentlemen.
So from the beginning, those days, it was very difficult to even let the NDPC be the driving force behind all the plans. So it didn't work that way.
So we need a long-term program there.
Yes, you have it.
what I
before we
think
go?
is that if we plug all the challenges and loopholes that we're talking about legally and the binding documentation on everybody else, I think this long-term process or long-term framework should always be anchored in the domestic private sector, meaning the indigenous private sector, because these are the people that own the land. These are the people who have to be able to do things that the residual value of what they do remains in the country. Because I think we've always looked at the diaspora private sector as panacea for all our evils and all our ills. And then we forget the fact that if $1 comes in, 3 goes out, because they're going to invest, recoup some returns and return them to their shareholders. So we have to look at it from the point of view that how do we domesticate all our developmental plans? The capacity that can be grown from it. We were all born little boys and girls, and we grew up to this level. So if we start to nurture and grow, as Nee indicated, that we don't want to bring the Chinese railroad to come and build all our trains for the rest of mankind. We can develop the capacities here ourselves, or our seaports and others. So the domestic private sector will be the engine and the driver of these domestic, development plans that we think, if we put it in the right perspective, the framework should be beautiful for all of us.
Gentlemen, are we all agreeing for the continuation next week, Doc?
Sure.
Because honestly, the bit about binding, making a document binding, we still need to exhaust it from the few observations you made, Doc. So give me your final words, Dr. Nimo Thompson. Next week you will not be around. You get somebody to stand in for you.
Well,
you want us to go, let it go.
We can always identify a convenient or mutually convenient time to come. But to wrap it up, I have to emphasize that
you do have about 15 seconds for me, no more than
this is an evolving process. It includes identifying potential bottlenecks to implementation. We are working on that. The issue of moving ministers is only one. Even moving technical people within ministries and so forth, late release of funds, non-release of funds, high inflation. There's a whole area. And next time, honestly, I think we should move from one area of the plan to the next. And it'll give us a much clearer opportunity to look at these issues as opposed to looking at it in general. And then we can zero in on each of those things that we're doing. But virtually everything that's been raised here is being considered in one form, so that we never really had the chance to elaborate on those.
Mr. Bogo, what do you make of the Booster Fund support?
Very excellent support we have received from them. Since we approached them in this way, they have provided the support in order that we could do a research. We went to the field and interviewed stakeholders, about 200 persons. And then from there, we did a sensitization program among our membership. Again, we have done 2 dialogue sessions, one in Accra, in which most of the built-up professionals were invited in addition to accountants, institutions, bankers, insurance, and all. They came. They brought out their views and ideas about what they don't understand. We tried to explain from our point as planners. We also had a member from the NDPC being there to explain. We also went down to Kumasi, the KNUST. We met the final year planning students and then, what do you call them, postgraduate students, and not the entire lecturers over there. And then again, a member from the NDPC was there to help us explain. So all these have been funded by Booster Fund, and we're asking them to give us some more support to go around again. Just going around and supporting NDPC in this manner, so that what we thought from the beginning about the long-term plan, which has officially been taken, government alone cannot do all. It's like we are going below them. At each stage, we are in consultation with them. We are in consultation with them. They tell us what we are appropriate to say, and so on. So they've helped us quite a lot, and we're asking for more on this platform.
All right, our time is run so fast. I can't believe it. I can't believe it, gentlemen.
That's okay. I couldn't believe either.
We have to be going. Many thanks to you, Mr. Alfred Kwesi Poku, Vice President, Ghana Institute of Planners, for attending this evening. Thanks so much, Dr. Nimo Thompson, Director General, National Development Planning Commission. And many thanks to you also, Nana Osei-Bonsu, Chief Executive, Private Enterprise Federation, and appreciation to you, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director, Institute of Democratic Governance, and for all those of you out there who contributed by way of WhatsApp and message. Thanks so much. I'm sorry I couldn't read some of the messages, but hopefully when we meet again, we'll let you know when we are coming back on this subject, and then we'll open the lines for you again to be part of. Thanks so much for being part of the discussion. We have been discussing the need for a long-term national development plan for Ghana. It's brought to you by the Booster Fund with support from the GBC and the GJA. Next week, we will be here again with another discussion. Till then, good evening and bye for now.